Welcome to episode 10 with Catherine Lyell, who is here for the Man's Mind podcast. This podcast is being created specifically to help educate men on their personal development and healing journey, to gain awareness and to build a community. I'm super excited to be doing this interview. Basically, it's going to be on porn addiction and the different avenues and underlying issues that create that. Catherine Lyell is also a psychic, a Kundalini specialist, intuitive, and she works in the spiritual field with clients, as well as being in the men's health as a porn addiction specialist. Thank you for joining us, Catherine.
Thank you for having me. It's great. It's really great to be here. And your program is amazing. So I'm really, really excited to be part of this amazing program that you've set out with all these amazing people.
I'm so excited to hear about this because a lot of the porn addiction I have seen in my friends' lives come between relationships. I see it with my men's clients, and I'm really interested to hear a more science perspective and the spiritual intuitive side as well. And I know that you have a personal journey with it.
Yep.
Can you share with me about your personal journey into this kind of work and what's led you to doing what you are doing currently?
Sure. So there's an incorrect perception that because I'm out there and I'm spruiking my message, and I've been doing it for like 8 years now, that I'm a woman scorned, right? And it's or they just assume that I've had a long-term relationship where I've been burnt by porn, and that's actually incorrect. There was one person, so I opened a men's health clinic in 2015. I've been a kinesiologist for over 15 years, but I started to do massage prior to opening the clinic. So it was about 2013. I did an amazing Lomi course with a Hawaiian elder that came out, and I learnt the hula and the Hawaiian methodologies, and it changed my life. I learnt unconditional love from Kumu Brenda and her partner. But what happened in my business was I started to attract men, because men go to female practitioners in terms of massage. They don't like men touching them. And the kinesiology was difficult to get people to understand it and understand why they needed it. And back then, Facebook had only just been around for personal use. And so there was some business skills lacking for me. But when I did the Lomi course, I attracted the men, and the men would just say at the end of the session, once they open up their heart space, what else? What else can I do? What else do you have? What can I buy? And they would do, then I started setting homework, and it was self-pleasure homework, because we were working with the sexual aspects of them, as well as the mental health and the depression and anxiety. But I started to see patterns, and they started to do the homework. And this is before I opened the clinic. And then one day I was speaking to a man who we met on a dating site, and him and I had never met. And he said to me, I'm a little bit on the phone. He said, I'm really intimidated by you. I don't know if I want to meet you. I feel like, I said, why is that? And he said, because you know men better than any man I know. And it's like a light just went poof, either in or out, I'm not sure. And it was just this, I didn't even hear what he said after that. And I thought, wow, I'd been trained up by them, whoever them are, on the dating sites, because I was having experiences that no one else was having, none of my friends. Why did this stuff keep happening to you? And because I was interested in the studying men through the dating sites, and I didn't realize what I was doing, but that was just my innate nature, and and learning the hard way about men's sexuality, right? And then fast forward to opening the clinic, and I had a practitioner come in that wanted to work in the clinic, and he was a porn addiction specialist. Now, I was already seeing some stuff happening with the men, erectile dysfunction, mental health stuff, just the energy work that I was doing. There was something going on, and I was activating Kundalini without realizing what I was doing, I guess. And there was something missing. And when this guy came in and we had a chat, he never worked in the clinic in the end, but I changed my form whenever a new practitioner would come in to just have one question in there. So, do you smoke? I'd send them to the hypnotherapist. Do you watch porn? Is what I added, and I was going to send them to him. He never came and worked for me. He tried working for a week and had no clients. So I ended up changing my form, and then saw that 100% of men that were coming in, 100% were watching porn. I'm thinking, hang on a sec. So I started to research, because this porn addiction specialist we had an interview type situation, and he cried when he spoke to me about my work that I was doing, because he had that journey himself. And I started to see the synergy, and the work that I was doing was profound. And so I started asking questions, started doing research, and then 2018 I started a research study, which is still running at the moment, and the new book explains and reviews all of that. And it was 97% of men were watching porn regularly. That's what the results came back as. And I can honestly say that it's dropped to 87%. So we've seen a massive shift in it already. And then so the research turned into ebooks, turned into articles, and more research, and then on the job research. And when you have this information, it changes who you are as a practitioner, especially if you're working with men. And I cannot stress that enough to anyone that is watching this. If you are working with men, any men, in any age group, boys, teens, you have to look at this, because it is at the core of our society. It's also at the core of their mental health. So we'll go into that. But yeah, that's basically. And at the same time, I actually dated a man for 3 weeks at the same time as the porn addiction specialist came in, and he told me, I can't hide anything from you. I can see what's happening here. I'm going to have to, lay it all out. And he did. He said, I used to have a porn addiction. It was really bad. And I don't want to tell you how bad it was. And I'd gone into like being a female in that role, not a practitioner. And I didn't want to ask any questions. I felt insecure. I didn't want to be his practitioner. So these conversations that I was having with him were really, really awkward. And because I just kind of discovered porn addiction, I wasn't really comfortable in, and just laying it all out, because I felt insecure, and how dare I be needy as a woman and actually ask these questions. So anyway, he had all of the symptoms of porn addiction. So the aggression, the mental health issues, the other behaviors that I saw that he wasn't aware of, the impotence, all of that he discussed with me, but he hadn't coupled it with the porn addiction. He was just laying it all out, because he's like, you're a practitioner and I can't hide anything from you, and these are all my problems. Are we good to go? Right? It was amazing. But at the same time, I had the porn addiction guy come in, and I just married the two, plus all the research that I've done now. And that's literally what happened. I was being guided for my purpose. And, and now I'm the only one in the world doing this. I know there are other people working in this field and on this topic, but the work that I'm doing with the guys with the Kundalini activation, it is literally the cure for porn addiction. They don't feel like watching porn ever again after that. It's pretty amazing.
Which is amazing results. Amazing. I love hearing that story, because I'm having like these drop downs of the different things I've noticed working with men, and my own I guess marrying of information through my own experience of the Kundalini energy, which for anyone who doesn't know, I'd love to hear your explanation of what that is. But
sure.
From that level of understanding what that energy is and how it fits into the porn addiction, and where there's a disconnect and why they exist. So for anyone who is watching that's unsure of what that means, can you explain that, please?
Sure. So you have, if I had $1 for every time I heard a man say I have a high sex drive, I'd be very, very rich. And in my book and all of my writings, I teach the difference between sex drive and sexual energy. And sexual energy is it is everything, right? It's your core energy, your life force energy, it's your chi, it's your jing. Your Kundalini energy is a Sanskrit term and methodology, and we are born, when we're conceived, we have this Kundalini energy present, and it's like two snakes coiled up at the base of the spine. And when we'll say turned on or horny, because that's what people kind of relate that to, then your Kundalini will go up your spine and up through the back of your neck and through the chakra system, and you'll feel it as tingles or goosebumps or hairs on the back of your neck. It's the natural it's activated by the arousal system or the limbic system, really, when you think about it, which is the five senses. So, you know, it might be 5 o'clock on a Friday back in the day. It doesn't happen anymore because everyone's very different now vibrationally. But back when I worked in corporate, everyone had their amazing suits on, the shortest skirts they could get away with. The lipstick was on. Everyone was in the bathroom at 4 o'clock, 4:30, you know, doing all the lipstick and the makeup, doing the hair, changing over the outfits or whatever. And off we'd go into the beer gardens, into the city, into the, you know, the nightlife, and you'd be drunk at home by 8:30. But we can also talk about that as sexual energy. So the smells, the music, the tastes, the feeling, it's not there anymore. It absolutely isn't there anymore. And we're talking back in the 90s, okay? So that's Kundalini energy. What I talk about it though is we take guys from horny, not horny, horny, not horny. So dormant Kundalini, active Kundalini, to what we call activated. So your Kundalini can be activated by a lot of things, and it can be, you know, energy work. So as soon as I touch someone, my Kundalini activates. I can be activated by love or connection with a friend or someone dodgy in the street, and my Kundalini goes off. So it's your life force energy, but most of the time people know it as their sexual energy. But in guys that watch porn, they'll often say, I've done Kundalini yoga and I've studied Tantra and blah, blah, blah. Did you move and shake? Did your body move and shake? If it didn't, you haven't activated your Kundalini. You might have felt something, or you might have had an experience, and you might have seen the light, and, you know, all those things. And I don't take that away from people, but if they haven't started to convulse on the table or their body starts to move, then the Kundalini hasn't activated. It might have activated in terms of woken up, and you might have felt something, but sexual energy, so that's the Kundalini. In men that watch porn, when I give them a demo, when I first start working on them, and I put my hands on the table as if they're laying there, because I can do distant sessions. So I call their energy up on the table and I show them their vibrational frequency in terms of energy. So the way that my body moves shows them where their energy is at. And then I show them my energy. So I call up my energy and my body moves and shakes like I can hardly stand up, and it's full on. So that's Kundalini. That is your core energy, your sexual energy, your chi, your jing. It's all connected to the meridians and chakras. Now, your sex drive that men talk about over here is all here. This is the sex drive. So sex drive is a broad term, just like libido. We're talking hormones and, you know, diet and, you know, how old you are, and all of those things come into it. However, sex drive, as men know it, is the cycle that their brain is in terms of addiction and orgasm and ejaculation. That's what they know as sex drive. So men have become sexual here visually, and their brain, which is addicted to the chemicals and hormones, there's none of this, like, you know. And this is why men who watch porn cannot, and I'll say it again, and I get triggered, everyone at this stage, and I understand that, and the male leaders hate this, because we're not talking about personality, right? We're not talking about you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. But if you watch porn, you cannot be present in sex. You just can't. Energetically, you can't. Your Kundalini's dead in the water. It's like two wet rags on the laundry floor. It stinks and it's been there forever, and it's shit. So when you're with someone, right, a natural energy circuit occurs in the body. It's called the microcosmic orbit. In kinesiology, we talk in terms of meridians, same with Chinese medicine. So you have a circuit that runs around your body naturally, right, from around the meridians. And when you connect with someone, your circuit becomes theirs and you become one. Doesn't matter what position you're in, it happens. But when people do this, they are dead inside. I can tell way before I sleep with someone if they're watching porn. However, you can tell in that moment, and this is what we need to teach women, because the awkward conversations around this, which we also need to change. You know, the guys have got erectile dysfunction. They're not saying anything. They don't understand why it's happening. They're just hoping for the best. They're just pounding a hole, hoping to God that, you know, they don't lose their erections. They're trying to have orgasms. It's not happening. we just got to get rid of all of that. People are doing sex wrong. You know, we got to start with the breath work, start with the connection, start with the energy. If you're not feeling like you're leaving your body when you're having sex with someone, you're not doing it right. Yeah.
Oh, there's so much there that I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I could just talk so long on this topic with you.
Yeah.
Because the something through my own journey is recognizing how much Kundalini I have and how
Yeah.
much of an actual sexual healer I am. So
Yeah.
being in my Kundalini in a sexual interaction or having sex with someone and feeling the energy and also feeling what can be transmuted and shifted. And
Yeah.
when you talk about that and the disconnect from men, they're in their minds, you know, they're completely in their minds and they're disassociated so much from their body. And I think the main thing that I've got from so much of this work and talking to all of the different practitioners and coaches is that men are stuck in their mind and they need to start to reconnect with their body. And this is so important when it comes to intimate relationships. You cannot connect with somebody if you cannot feel. Like if you can't feel the energy, you can't even identify where an emotion is in your body. How are you meant to have a deep connection with somebody and actually feel that? And it's called there's a special symbol, isn't there, for that?
The microcosmic orbit. There's a dantian. And it works with the chakra systems. But in Taoism, they talk about sexual channels, but they're actually the chakras. And I kind of work with all of that in the sessions that I do. And you're right. So I've discovered lots of things. I channel lots of information when I'm working on men, but I've discovered that men have cut themselves off from the waist down. And what I mean by that is this does the sex, this does the relationships, and this does the work, right? And they're all disconnected. You've also got the masculine and feminine side. But the way I discovered it was actually someone that played soccer, and I didn't know, but I could see that his legs were all banged up, and I had this feeling, this cold feeling of his legs. And sometimes it's even to touch their skin, their legs are cold, but their head and neck is all like burning up and stuff. And there's an imbalance there, because I work a lot with meridians and kind of, I guess, energetic acupuncture, I'm calling it. There's a lot of Chinese medicine in kinesiology. So I discovered it, and I thought it was because his legs were banged up. And I said to him, have you ever had acupuncture? There's a lack of flow in your legs. And then what I worked out was because of him, I then looked at it in every other client. I was looking for things, right? And I noticed that, because there's a central line there in Chiron healing, which is the balance around the hips, and anything below that was cold. So I'm always moving the energy up and down and connected, and the two poles and all the chakras, the heart with the groin, the legs with the top, and it's like you fold someone in half. You've got to kind of connect all that back up and then fold them sideways. You connect all of that. So it's the integration of all of these energy systems, and men flip out on the table, and I love it, because if they're not moving and shaking and flipping around like a fish, and they're sweating and they're yelling and they're crying, and some are in fetal positions, and I hold that space for them, because this is the first time they've ever felt this stuff, and they don't know what's going on, because the Kundalini will make you convulse from the abs. Let's say it's almost like a that jolt when you feel like you're falling, or you're falling asleep, and it's that jolt, and it starts off as a jolt. It's almost like someone goes boof with the the paddles, the medical paddles, and they start to jolt, and then it's another one, and then it starts off as a ticklish kind of reaction. So you're near their groin, or you're using the light, and they start to go like this, and then it picks up, and then it turns into what I call a quantum wave. So it's like a vibration that goes from the feet to the top of the head. And to watch that is incredible, and their lives are never the same again. So my work is, so rewarding. But not everyone has that reaction, and not everyone is ready. And to your point around, men being in their heads, porn addiction causes brain damage in 100% of cases. Okay. And we'll get to what that porn addiction is in a sec, but it's the frontal lobe. So it's your emotional expression. So that emotions that you're talking about, they can't feel it. It's the sympathy, the empathy, the lack of in relationships. we've got this society where we say men can't feel, they can't ask for help, they can't express themselves. Well, guess what? Over 90% of them are watching porn, and it causes brain damage. And it's the frontal lobe that controls the decision making and the processing and the concentration and the focus. And all of that comes from the control panel of the personality, which is the frontal lobe. So if they can't express and they can't feel, it's because of porn. There's technical stuff that goes behind that, but we've just got to get into this. It is brain damage, and it's exactly the same as a drug addiction. So would you introduce heroin to your relationship without asking questions? If you replace the word porn with heroin every single time, then that's what we're dealing with. And people need to just shift their mindset out of porn is normal. Men watch porn all the time. Boys will be boys. This is how we are. This is how we are in Australia. We've got a really bad culture in terms of sexuality and porn in Australia. There are other countries that are suffering just as bad, but it's a massive problem here. And it's that disconnect. It's the lack of heart space, and that disconnect from the body.
Yeah. And that normalization as well. And there's so much normalization around it, but then there's also so much shame and guilt.
Yes.
And it's where you've got two polarities that are in such contrast to each other that it just continues that separation rather than bringing there some allowance and understanding to what's actually going on.
It doesn't align. It's like this, we're allowed to do this, everyone does it, but it's like no one tells anyone, and let's keep it shameful. And if I come out and talk about it, men often say that I'm shaming men. What? If it was drug addiction or gambling or anything else, everyone would be, yep, on board. When I start talking about children seeing and getting access to pornography, or child pornography itself and sex trafficking, everyone engages on my posts, everyone shares it. So everyone's comfortable with knowing or categorizing that there are freaks out there and what they do is not right, and I'm not like that, and I don't watch violent porn, and I don't look at children nude. So and this is the women as well. So everyone kind of puts it in like a container and says, those people are that, I'm not that. And this is why I stopped using the word addiction, because men don't associate porn with addiction. They don't. They don't use the word. They don't understand. I get laughed at all the time saying, is that a thing? You see the confusion, like, how is that a thing? And they laugh. And I'm like, it's a thing.
It's a really big thing.
It's a big fucking thing.
And just before you go into what porn addiction actually is, that piece on the categorization of this is wrong and this is bad and I don't do this. And when you put, children and different things into that, and then understanding how our mind works at times and we are not our thoughts, and the level of shame that can come up if, say, you ever had, and this was a topic, I think this was a conversation that I had with somebody recently around when you've been, say, in sexual abuse, and it's surprising at how many men, and I'm sure you've got a better figure of that than what I do, because it all would tie into it. But when people have had some form of sexual abuse, there can be parts of the subconscious mind that then has had a thought about a child running around, maybe naked in the backyard playing, and then they have this thought and it triggers the shame and the guilt as well of like, oh my God, I must be a pedophile. And then it's that container of wrongness rather than actually bringing these conversations up, sharing the understanding where this is actually coming from to move through and heal it.
A lot of men have gone down what we call the rabbit hole, where there's been, hours of porn use. It might be hungover, it might just be once, or it might be all the time, and it might be just the thing that you do to get away from family, or, you might have a day to yourself and you just watch porn all day. But everyone that's watched porn has gone down that rabbit hole at some point and ended up watching things that they don't think they would ever watch, including gay porn for straight guys, for example, trans porn. And I do treat a lot of men, surprisingly a lot of men, well, not surprising to me, but to other people, that have gone down that rabbit hole of transgender porn and have tried to seek it out in reality because of the thrill that it creates and the confusion these men want children and they want loving, connected relationships with women. Yet here they are on strange sites seeking out, public toilet humiliations and, and connections with people that that they just don't understand themselves. And that's the shame. The shame is so deep, and they're so scared that they're never going to have a normal life but they still don't understand that it's the porn and the brain damage that's actually sent them down that path. And a disclaimer, I don't care if you want to go in that path, that's fine, but these men don't. And they're watching gay porn, and they're watching the more violent, more gay, more trans, more freaky stuff. And we don't actually discuss content when I treat clients. It's never kind of come up. It has occasionally. There's been some people that have admitted they've watched child porn. It's a very gray area I just don't go there because it's irrelevant. And what I mean by that is, doesn't matter what you're watching. And this is where the ethical porn argument comes in, right? You can be watching your ex-partner all the time. You can be watching ethical porn. You can be watching porn made by women. You can be watching massage stuff that isn't, sex or whatever, right? It doesn't matter what the content is. You still have a porn addiction because of the reactions in the brain, right? Obviously, violent porn and all the stuff we just discussed is more damaging to you as a person in terms of your emotional and mental state and how you lead your life. But it doesn't matter whether you're ethical porn or violent porn, you'll still have a porn addiction, and you'll still be having to watch it all the time. And couples get caught in this spiral as well. Couples don't think if they're watching it together they have a porn addiction, but they absolutely do. And the stories that I hear, I won't tell them today, but will curl your toes. And the stuff that is happening out there in your bedrooms is why I wrote this new book, because I've got to be very careful about how I talk about people, and with absolute respect. But there are things that people need to know, that there are normal men, let's say, out there in amongst you, sleeping in your beds, working with you, your bosses, your children, and they are having these horrific experiences around porn. They'll never admit it. They'll never tell you about it, and they will never get help about it. But they've opened up to me, and we had to share those stories. And I got permission from the people anonymously to share these stories, because the public has no idea what's going on out there. It's been declared a global health crisis by the doctors and the police. Now, when they're saying something is a global health crisis, that we already know at this level that we work with men, you and I, and on all the practitioners, we already know what this is doing. But for the cops to declare it a global health crisis, and the GPs, because they're seeing all of the young girls have sexual injuries, it's a thing that we really, really need to look at.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. And I could talk into that, but I think at this point, how about to clarify what exactly is porn addiction?
Okay. So the definition of a porn addiction is once a month or more. Now everyone just goes, what? Don't tune out, okay? Because it's true. So there's two parts to this, right? So your textbook definition in psychology of an addiction is if you can't go without something for a month, then you have an addiction to it. Now we're all addicted to everything. Then we have that argument, and then people tune out then and go, oh, well, everyone's got addictions and so be it. So there's that definition. Now, I also treat, so if you're watching porn once a month, but you're only masturbating once a month, then you absolutely hands down have a porn addiction. All right. And I would even go as far as saying if you are only masturbating once every 2 months and watching porn every single time, then you have a porn addiction then. So you have a reliance on the porn. Now, the perception out there is it's only a problem and it's only an addiction if it interferes with your life or your relationship. That is not true at all. It's an absolute myth. And I want the leaders, the male leaders especially, to scrap that from their language, because that's what they're using. It is absolutely not true, because I have treated a 71-year-old, let's say, who came in, and his wife had passed away a couple of years ago, and he was starting to, rediscover his sexuality. She died from cancer. His whole sexual life had been, put on hold. And, with respect to her, then, he wanted to explore some things afterwards. And I said, how often are you masturbating? How often are you watching porn? As I ask everyone. And I said, I'm sorry, you have a porn addiction. And he was like stamping his feet on the ground nearly. He was almost like, I'm not going to sit down. This is like, I'm having a tantrum right now. And I said, I'm sorry, you do. How old were you when you first saw porn? And he was like, oh. So we worked out he had a 55-year porn addiction, okay? Only once a month recently. Sometimes he didn't watch it for a long time. But he's at one end of the scale, okay? So there's a minimum, it's a scale. That's at the minimum. So if you're watching it once a month or more, it's classified as regularly. And if you look at how old you were, then most guys have been watching it since they were like 11, 12, 15, right? So, and they're in their 30s or 40s. Some of them, the ones that are in their 20s, they already have a full-blown porn addiction because of the smartphones, right? But the guys that are a bit older, they question it. But that is the definition of the frequency, because that's the biggest question I get asked. But the actual porn addiction itself is not a sex addiction. It is an addiction to the chemicals and hormones produced in the brain. Okay, so when you watch porn, let's pretend you are 17, you've just got a smartphone, you're going to start watching porn, and no doubt in my mind, you're going to watch it every day for a week, let's say, right? So when you watch porn, your brain produces oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. Dopamine is the novelty drug. I like what I see. I want to see more of it. It's the thrill drug. It's the addiction drug. And everyone knows the little red numbers on your phones, on all those apps. People just go round and round and round until all the little red numbers are cleared. Or you get a text message from people, even if it's not a good text message or it's work or whatever. There's that dopamine, that tiny little dopamine hit. Dopamine kicks in prior to the session if you already have an addiction, right? It will be your wife says, I'm going out for a bit, and you start driving home from work. That's when the dopamine comes in, right? So it's not just from watching the porn, it's around the habit itself. The thrill of keeping this a secret also is a dopamine hit, right? It's the reverse of what you think it is, right? So the guys are in shame. They don't want to tell anyone. It's all secret squirrel. That also helps produce the dopamine because you're hiding it, okay? So serotonin is the other one. Serotonin is the happy hormone. I like, it's like the well-being, the happy feeling. Serotonin is lacking in people that have depression, right? And serotonin, you get the antidepressants, and it's all about serotonin. Guys get to feel serotonin, they get to feel happy, they get to feel, a good sense of well-being when they're watching porn and masturbating. They don't realize that. I mean, they, if you asked a guy and said, are you happy watching porn? Absolutely. That's why they don't want to quit. As much as it hurts them and they've lost things in their life and it's caused brain damage and they've got erectile dysfunction, they get to feel happy. And why would you take that away from them, right? So that's serotonin. Then you've got the oxytocin. Now, this is the one I'm going to do more research on because intuitively, this is the way forward because this is where the women come in. Okay, so oxytocin is the love drug. You get to feel it. It's the bonding hormone. You get to feel it when you have sex, especially when you first start meeting someone and dating. You can feel it with your children. Anytime anyone hugs you, there's an oxytocin hit. But it's the bonding hormone. So it's produced in high levels when you give birth as a woman, to try and bond with the baby after you've just given birth to a watermelon and it's ripped you in half, right? So that's the bonding hormone. The oxytocin is the connection and the bonding to the acts that you're seeing, all right? So if I say to guys, think about every single porn movie or porn scene that you've ever seen, your body thinks that you were there, that it happened to you. So the subconscious mind also comes into this. So the subconscious mind says, if you're having a chemical reaction to anything, you are experiencing it, right? So crying at a movie, for example, or if I sat here with a lemon and I talked to you about this lemon in detail for 10 minutes and I was cutting it up and the juice was spurting everywhere, and then I went to put it near my mouth and bite on it, tequila shots, My glands go, every time I tell that story, there's no lemon. Your glands might go telling that story, right? Exactly. You're having a reaction. Okay. So when your brain has a reaction, a chemical reaction to something, your subconscious mind thinks it's happening to you, as well as the oxytocin bonding that. So every single porn scene, you were there. This is why the no fat movement talks about the peeping tom and the you know, you're the spectator. This is a spectator sport because your body thinks it's happening to you. Then you've got the hindbrain, which is the impulse part of the brain that says, we didn't die from this yesterday. Let's do it again today. Same thing happens with skydiving, traveling overseas, you know, and people come back from overseas or skydiving and they actually have a bit of a lull where like all the chemicals and hormones are like kind of over, and they go into, we all know people that go into travel depression, right? And then so they have to start planning their next holiday so they can start up again. That's the chemical reaction. So that's the oxytocin and the serotonin and the dopamine and the hindbrain and the subconscious mind, right? You've also get tunnel vision when you watch porn. Tunnel vision is there's an earthquake starting. I've already started masturbating. I'm nearly about to have an orgasm. I'm going to keep going. Mum's coming in the car, in the driveway. I just heard a car. I'm going to keep going because you're in that tunnel. And in that tunnel are opiates and endorphins, right? So why would you give this up when you get to feel so amazing, right? So that's what's happening in the brain. When that happens once, and then you do it again the next day, and then you do it in the next day, let's say for a week, the brain has to change itself because it can't accommodate for all the extra chemicals and hormones. It can't. You're not going to die from it, but this is where it's exactly the same as a drug addiction. If you took cocaine every single day, you'd have these rushes of endorphins and all the things. And then the brain has to change itself to accommodate for the flooding of chemicals because it's an unnatural situation, right? When it does that, the neural pathways change. A neural pathway is like a little program that says, let's say when I feel shit, so when my teacher's yelling at me, when my parents are yelling, when I'm no good at school, when I'm getting teased in the yard and I masturbate, this is teens obviously, then I get to feel good. So that's a neural pathway, all right? Now, boys' brains are still developing to the age of 25, 27. So they are brutalizing any brain development that was meant to happen organically. The thing is, they'll never know. They'll never know the difference between, you know, a brain damaged body because they're in it. They don't know any different. It's only the men that don't watch porn that I have studied, and there's only been 22 of them in my career. That's in my personal life as well. I have studied them, and their energy is different. Their brain is different. Their memory is different. Their presence is different. Their masculinity and their power is completely different. So you've got this hit crash. So the hit of the drugs and the porn and the whatever, as soon as you orgasm and ejaculate, bang, down you go. You release all that stuff. Then prolactin goes up. Prolactin is a hormone that causes erectile dysfunction. So you've got this hit crash. It might start off as once a month. It might be a couple of times every couple of weeks. Then it's once a week. Then it's because what's happening is your brain is requiring the chemicals and hormones to survive. Once it changes itself, it goes from here, oh, hang on, I've got to change. And up here, it requires a high level, like a daily dose of drugs, which is the porn and the masturbation. And when it gets to that, it just keeps going and going and going. So you've got this hit crash cycle. The brain is ruling the thing. So you come down and men will say to me, you know, I'm all right. I'm horny as hell. And then I do it. And then I'm okay for a couple of days. And then I have to do it again, right? And I don't understand that. And that's what's happening. You're coming down off crack and your brain is searching for the crack. And so just like a crack addict, when you start to come down, the brain doesn't like it and it has to seek out. It doesn't have to be porn and masturbation because porn addiction always turns into something else. You might be seeking out, you know, outside of your relationship, dating sites, you know, meeting up with people randomly, you know, if you're single, just, you know, and I've studied serial killers now. That's in the new book. So we've gone from, you know, a once a month guy to serial killers who blame porn. They all watched porn and they all got exposed to it at a really young age, at around age 5. right? So there's different severities, there's different scales, but that is the baseline. If you're watching it once a month or more, you have this brain addiction. And then that's why NoFap doesn't work, because you're putting the brain into scarcity. We can't do that. We have to take something out and put something back in. Because if you want to train the brain and neuroplasticity and changing the neural pathways and all of that thing, that takes 90 days for the brain to do that. Not all my programs are 90 days, and men will just come in once and expect a miracle. So we have to throw a whole lot of education at people, because it is the same as a drug addiction and it is ruining men. So that's what a porn addiction is. It's a neural addiction, and you're addicted to the chemicals and hormones in the body.
Yeah. And I mean, when I hear that, and I love hearing the science side of it and all of the different chemicals and how basically you've programmed your brain to only function that way. And you're not gonna feel good unless you're doing the thing, and it gives you that hit, and then you go back, and constantly your level is increasing. And when I hear that, I think, like, that's why you end up with more and more kinky things that people look into, and the level of, I guess, what I would call separation from self just becomes a greater distance away. So when what I've started to notice with people that have this strong addiction to sex and masturbation and pornography and seeking of any sexual experiences, it's a disconnect from, I know when we were talking about the Kundalini, I didn't hear you mention about it being, I know you said life force, but the creator energy, which is our, and I think people get that a little bit confused at times. What I've noticed is that there's a level of disconnect from what they're actually creating in the world for themselves, or in their external environment. And it's the constant seeking for that level of connection with their own life force and creator energy. And I know that's a little bit more on the spiritual side of things.
But that's the thing. We create from our sacral chakra, right? And that's women and men. So the sacral chakra is just below the belly button. For those that don't know, it's like a little energy vortex. It's like a little brain for that area. And what I've discovered is so the guilt and shame, I mean, you can Google this stuff as well. And there's lots of people that have books on, the emotions that we store in different parts of the body, including the Chinese medicine. So your guilt and shame is in your sacral chakra. Now, if you have an imbalance sexually, so an imbalance being sexual abuse as a kid or an adult, you can have, a porn addiction, that's a sexual imbalance, sex addiction, any of that stuff, or just being rejected by a wife, for 10 years, that's a sexual imbalance. And what happens there when that's a problem, so your orgasm comes from there, right? So this creator energy, orgasm comes from just below the belly button. It's not about ejaculation, and ejaculation and orgasm are two separate processes that we learn to separate, and I teach guys how to do that. But we create from that sacral chakra. So your desire for life, every part of life, your motivation in business, in relationships, and creating things like a holiday or a new meal at home, cooking is a creator energy. So men will come in. There's one man that came in years and years ago, and he said, my business is, I don't know what's going on. My business isn't going too well. I don't even know if I want to do it. And I went through all the business training, because I do all of that as well. And I said, what about, feedback forms? Is there something going on? People are quitting that. I think it was a cleaning business or something. And then I said to him, when we, crossed all those T's and dotted the I's and there was nothing there, I said, are you having sex with your wife? Because he came in for kinesiology. It wasn't porn addiction or anything. And he said, oh no, so she's going through a thing and that's okay. And I said, no, there's no judgment there. I just need to know if you're having sex with your wife. And he said, no. And I said, is that okay with you? And he didn't want to answer. He was like, the judgment that he loved his wife so much, and they had like 50 million kids, and and it was really, really hard for him to say it's not okay with him, because men heal through sex. They heal through that connection with the feminine. I said to him, well, that's what's happening, right? As soon as you sort this out, you don't have to have sex to sort it out. You can do energy work, you can do chakra work, you can do meditation, you can do Kundalini stuff, you can come and see me. You know, there's practitioners out there that do, you know, Tantra and all the things. So you can sort all of that out. A shaman will do it as well, the energy work. So you don't have to have sex to fix this, is my point there, is that you need to understand, though, that it does come from there. So if you have a sexual imbalance, including porn addiction, the rest of your life will be what I call flatline. So you'll think you're coping, you'll think you're sleeping, you think you're in a relationship, you think you're a father, and everything's going okay, but it's not grand. It's not connected. It's not like mind-blowing, like you're not in the vortex, you're not using your intuition, like there's nothing happening there, you're just getting by. And so, you know, that whole area, I'll just tell you, so the groin is about stress and trauma. That's where, so if we head towards the groin, there's normally a reaction, a ticklish reaction in people that have high anxiety or PTSD. You go on the same skin up the other way, there's no reaction. Same skin, right? You head towards the area and it's like, woo, like it's a defense mechanism. So I believe, and I've studied this, the ticklish thing that happens is a defense mechanism of the stress and trauma that's stored in the groin. Then you've got the ex-partner's stuff in the testicles, so all of the conditioning and all of the rejection and things like that. Then the prostate is about emasculation, feeling useless as a man, or you losing your roles or your territory. So men that have split up and lost the kids and all of that, there's massive prostate issues there, which they may not know about. And then the hips is all about relationships as well. So it's like a big hub of crap. And men, and we've always said that men store their tension in their ass. I don't know if people, you know, massage therapists and that will know that, and women store it in their shoulders. So this whole hub, when they have sex, it's like the wand of light, which I hate the term, but the terminology around Tantra, that wand of light enters the flower. You've got this energy thing that happens around the energy circuit. And what they're doing is they're plugging into the Shakti, the feminine energy, which is able to transpose or transform or transmute, whatever you want to call it, that shitty energy that's coming out. And we also call it the demon seed, which men always, they taught me that. Rub one out, got to get it out. Got to feel better, got to relax, got to get my focus and concentration back, so I'll masturbate. And what they're doing is they're releasing, it's not the actual ejaculation, it's the orgasm. So we call it orgasm therapy. They're actually releasing that stuff that's building up or in around all of those yucky areas that men struggle with, and they're releasing it through there. But masturbation does not cure you or heal you like sex does. So plugging into the feminine will change, you know, and men can walk off from sex like, woo, I feel amazing, I'm having the most amazing day, and I'm laying in bed like, you know, because I've been coughing and dry reaching and I'm trying to shift all their stuff, and it can happen during sex, it can happen afterwards, and no shower, no brushing my teeth is going to fix that. And I've got to do some, you know, cleansing stuff on myself. And the thing is, I'm very sensitive and I know when that stuff's happening because I'm trained in that, but it's happening to every woman.
And that is something that I find extremely interesting and can relate a lot. And the understanding of how much, especially people like yourself and I that are more intuitive and psychic and have this gift with energy, that until I recognized how much shit I was onboarding from the men that I was sleeping with, and how much physical illness, because I didn't actually know how to transmute that energy, was getting stored in my body. And then through time, understanding how to transmute. And what you're saying, I guess, is why you don't need to have sex. You don't have to have a woman do the transmuting for you. You learn to transmute your own sexual energy and have a clear channel. And one of the other questions that popped up was around the orgasm and ejaculation being separate things. Now, orgasm and full body, and that goes in tantric and Kundalini and a lot of conversations, because it is the energy that's actually going through your body. And I guess the curious question I have is, can you have the full body orgasmic tantric experience and the same level of ejaculation at the same time, or are they kind of always separate? Because I know this has been a topic with some of my men, and I don't have the answer for that yet.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can you can give it.
Yeah.
Is they can either have ejaculation and have this full-on fucking
Yeah.
or they have this deep intimate soul connection orgasmic experience, and they can't seem to marry the two things together.
Yeah. So when we start to talk about ejaculation, it's so you lose half your daily zinc every time you ejaculate. Right? We don't make zinc in our bodies. They have to get it externally, and most men aren't, and none of us are getting it from our food, right? So if a man doesn't have enough zinc in his body already, he's just depleting, right? You lose selenium, and when you have low zinc, you have high copper because they work together as cofactors. So you've got a copper toxicity and a zinc deficiency in anyone that has been ejaculating a lot, right? So when we say a lot, again, it's a scale, and this is just my experience and my intuitive belief that a man should is a terrible word, but the recommendation is once a week ejaculation. But at the same time, we are teaching the orgasm stuff in the background so that they can have like 10 orgasms in a row without ejaculation, and even without an erection sometimes, right? So we teach men ejaculation is a biological function, a reproductive function where the sperm is coming out of your testicles and your prostate. That's that, right? And so they can have these amazing, huge, and still ejaculate. We just push it off to the side like it's a non-thing. We take the charge off the meaning and the importance of what I call paintball, because guys are like, where do you want me to come? Where can I come? I want to come here. I want to come there. And I'm like, it's not paintball. What is going on? I'm interested in your breathing and your experience, and you're losing your shit. You know, if people aren't losing their shit when they're having an orgasm, something's wrong, right? You need to train yourself though, because we've trained ourselves a certain way and conditioned ourselves a certain way, including the women. And I give women this homework as well that I give the guys, because it's the same. The erections aren't there, obviously, but the lack of sensitivity that occurs when men have been watching porn for a long time, they don't breathe. So they close down when they have orgasms, right? So physically closing down the body, tensing their bum cheek, cleansing the whole, groin area, and having what I call a localized orgasm. So it's like, I call it a speed hump orgasm, because when guys are watching porn a lot, they actually are bored by it and they're trying to fast forward that. So they're looking for that hit and that fix. And then they have this little orgasm and it's like, oh my God. And then they feel empty and depleted afterwards, which is all of the nutrients and minerals that are being depleted, right? And all the chemicals coming down and crashing and all that thing. So we teach them to retrain the body, retrain the mind, conscious self-pleasure. So if you want to quit porn, my advice is no FAP. Do not quit masturbation. You have to learn how to do it differently. And we teach you that. We teach you energy work, breath work. If you can't do it on your own, it is not going to happen in sex. If you are having what I call these speed hump orgasms, or you ran over roadkill and you're like, what was that? What did I just run over? I think I just went over a speed hump, right? Or a person or whatever it is. That's what the orgasms are like. They're like these tiny little kind of localized empty feelings that leave you feeling empty because you've ejaculated and you've lost all your life force energy, right? So what we teach is full body orgasm. So instead of clenching and tensing and closing in and holding your breath and turning blue and all the things, you open up. And so you have to use the breath work to do it, because those times when you're about to come are very, very tense, right? And for women and men, where you start to like everything's clenching up, you have to train yourself to do the opposite of what your brain wants to do and your body wants to do, and you use your breath. Oh my God, right? And then to have a full body orgasm, you actually breathe faster, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Because when you're doing that, you've made this do something. So you're getting out of your head, and the orgasm, which is meant to travel up through the chakra system, but we stop it and we deplete it and we make it stay down there, and we're like shameful and we don't want to have an ugly face orgasm and like all of the things, we're naked and all of the variables of sex. You have to practice on your own. in your comfort, in your boundaries, in your raw vulnerability. And I even teach guys what to fantasize about, so that there's a witness there, and she's a light being. She's not a bend you over porn, woman. And it doesn't matter if they're married or not then, because she's not a person. She's a being, an ancient being who brings love and light. Because when people feel loved, and I mean like hit you in the heart, what the fuck was that? You have a massive full-blown orgasm. And it often happens with strangers. Like, you might be having a sensual massage or a tantric experience, or and because you're not attracted to the person, or you don't love them and you're afraid you're going to lose them, when there's this just stuff done to you that people know how to do, you end up having like these you feel loved. So yeah.
And that connection is such a massive thing, isn't it? About the opening and releasing, and
Yep.
The feeling of love is exactly what creates that, and
Yep.
it gives you the expansiveness of that life force energy and that connection.
Yep.
And I know as a practitioner, I've had to explain this to so many people, of the presence that I hold and the level of love that I be, and the recognition of that in men, and they can sometimes go into a level of shame because they feel turned on, and it's like they feel also, if they don't address it, that they're falling in love with you and all of these different things. And it's like, well, it's not actually that. It's that you feel this level of love, non-judgment and acceptance that is what your own being is wanting to have with itself. And it's not anything about me.
No, it's not. I'm just the facilitator. And I've walked into the massage room, and one guy was sitting up, and he's like, and I said, why are you sitting up? Is everything okay? Do you need to go to the toilet? And he said, I think I'm falling in love with you. And I'm like, it's okay. You're not. You're falling in love with yourself. But I understand that there's that attachment that happens, even with psychologists and stuff, there's that attachment, trauma attachment and all of those things. But when you get to help people feel like, I had a man come in that was married, but he hadn't had sex with his wife for 20 years, right? He said 1991. And I was like, what? It's like, fuck, mate, we are opening the biggest can of worms here. I'm gonna support you on a different level now, right? Because you got to hold space for people to feel something for the first time in their lives, and feel something that they were meant to feel from a partner or a mother or a freaky or a child. Or the trauma that people carry is huge. So the second that you connect people with their hearts, it's freaky deaky, and it's what has to happen. We have to crack everyone open to get through the lockdowns, to get through COVID. There's a connection crisis. I decided, like you were saying before, to stop having sex with men for a little bit. Not that it was like twice a year or once a year. It really wasn't that often, because I got pickier and pickier, and I couldn't be with someone that watched porn, and that rules out most guys, all of that stuff. I don't like talking about my personal stuff, but I'm having to now, because I'm having these experiences where I decided that the oracle needed cleansing. If you think of yourself as a crystal, and the pizza and the Coke, which I love, right? So that's okay with me. But, the damage that was coming in from nice guys, but who were dumping, and I was left to transmute, and I had adrenal fatigue at the time. So when you're unwell, you will notice these things even more, because you're already depleted. And so anything on top of that is like, whoa, going to the supermarket is depleting, having sex with Joe Blow, what the hell's going on there? I thought we have an amazing connection. Why do I feel shit? It's because you're being depleted. So, it's really important. I just said, no, I'm not doing it anymore. But unfortunately, my timing of 2019 and then come the COVID and the lockdowns, and there's a connection crisis, and we can't date. And now we don't feel like dating because we feel so shit about ourselves, and we've all put on weight. And, we're in Melbourne, by the way. So it's been 18 months. So there's like this thing that's happening, that the men are watching so much porn because of the lockdowns. The women are putting on weight. Everyone's getting older. Everyone's like being mums more than anything because of the homeschooling and stuff. And the guys are like either suffering because they've lost their purpose and their job, or they are questioning their purpose and their job because they're only working certain hours, and all of a sudden they've discovered they have other interests. So the men are either trying to make the money to save the family or losing their purpose. The women are getting fat, and so are the men. And no one wants to date. The single people are all like, I'm not match ready. I don't, and it's like this, like there's no this, there's this and this. And we have to do the work. We are starting men's circles, women's circles, teens, both boys and girls. And we've just recently, my business partner and I, we've drawn up a tree of life matrix, and it all has to connect in. The fathers have to connect in with the daughters, the mothers and the sons, and the teens together, and the men and the women. And we're going to start conscious dating stuff. There's going to be an app for sure, if I can get, a techie. So we have to fix this. And I've been fixing this. Not that the men are broken, but, porn addiction brutalizes men. It absolutely does. And suicide in men, it's 80% of men are killing themselves versus women. And, we all know the stats, and that's in our faces more than ever now. Well, no one has worked out why that is happening. And you'll see on all of the men's sites and stuff, they'll say men aren't allowed to cry. That's why they're killing themselves. It's not that. It's because they have brain damage. They have mental health issues, because that's why they're killing themselves. We get that, but no one's gone deeper than that. Everyone's like beyond blue. Let's just look after, mental health care plans, and let's all go on drugs. And no one's looking at what's really happening there. And it's, if you have brain damage, you have mental health problems, and it's over 90% of men. So they're the ones that are killing themselves. They may not even know why they have depression, because I know men that have killed themselves who have been happy in, their life. They've got a family, a wife they love, kids that they love, family around them, and they've still killed themselves. Right? So you've got to look at the prostate cancer as well, and the connection to porn addiction. It is absolutely connected, and you'll see that in my new book. I won't go into that now, but all of these things are connected, and porn addiction sits at the very core of all of this, as well as domestic violence, the Me Too movement, sexual assault, all of the sexual harassment, and then, because when you have all of that in society, and it's been there a while, as we know, the women shut down sexually because it's not safe. And if you want me to tell you, back in the Avalon days, when the stags were around, and the light workers, or the sirens, if you like, the women were teaching the men the intuitive tantric kind of energy work. And the stags started raping the women, or starting to take advantage of that. And so the women shut down from their groin, or their waist, or their belly down. And it has not opened up. And this is why I need to start working with the women. The women have been very stubborn sexually. And I don't want to offend too many people, but when you talk to men every day, and the same story comes in every single time, of the married men, there's no sex, she won't talk about it, it's shut down. We understand why. Once upon a time, you had a baby and you didn't feel comfortable, or you were sexually abused, or you had trauma, or you had kids, or he was no good in bed, or he wouldn't take the rubbish out, and he doesn't meet your needs otherwise. We get that, right? But the women are shut down sexually, so are the men. Everyone's just heading down into the dungeon. We've got to bring people out.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, all of that disconnect in men and women is exactly why there's so many issues in relationships. And if we want to see how, I suppose, spiritual, conscious, happy we are, look at our relationships with people and how balanced they are and how fulfilling they are. And that will give you a good internal look on the work that you need to do.
And if you add in the information age that we're in, we're overstimulated with too much information. We're distracted all the time. No one is present. No, including myself. I have to keep 5,000 messages every day, and where am I when I'm even, I don't remember things because I'm just, going like this and just getting it done. If a man comes into my life, I will be dropping it all. I'll be like, come on, let's connect, you know. But people get into that cycle if you're single, or if you're being, you know, disowned in your relationship or disconnected in your relationship. People look for things to keep them busy, to keep them distracted from the reality of what's going on. So, you know, we've got to fix this connection crisis, and we've got to do it for the kids. And if you look at the legacy that we're leaving, and the distraction and the lack of presence and the lack of sex, and there's even been studies done on there's a problem with procreation now. So men are withdrawing from sex. Sperm quality is shithouse because of all the ejaculation and stuff. The brain damage is there, so they're disconnected and they can't control their sexual behaviors because that's part of the brain. So there's a fertility issue, there's a population issue, and then people are like, then there's money, and you know, I can only have one child, and we are leaving a legacy of just horrific proportions. And now that we're in this, and we're in this age of, you know, the big divide, and people are ascending now, and we're becoming more conscious, and all of the stuff that's happening in the world right now, now is the time that we have to fix this. So thank you for having me on, because we have to get this message out to through as many different avenues as we can. I'll just say I have lots of free resources as well. If you can't see me, get to me, afford me, then go onto my website and find all of my ebooks for free. There's one book that's $5. There's hundreds of videos on YouTube, and I've designed it that way because about 60% of my following on Instagram are underage. They're all 13, 14, 17. I can't do anything about it. I can't really have conversations with them legally either. It just doesn't feel comfortable. Their parents don't know. The parents aren't going to pay for them to come and see me. I do treat some do. So we have to work out how to treat this at the core of where it's at now, which is the 12 and 13-year-olds. And the fathers have porn addiction. The mothers have their heads in the sand. They're teaching whatever sex ed they can or cope with. The kids have already seen all of the porn. You are embarrassed about talking about ejaculation or orgasm with your child, but guarantee you your son has seen gangbangs, violent porn, rape, all the things. The good stuff, the bad stuff. This is how they are educating themselves. So if you don't step up as parents and learn this stuff and start attacking them with science, you know, you've got to get in there. You know, these people, these what I call them academics, the ones that are going around to the schools, and they're doing amazing work. I'm not bagging them out, but they're not covering the stuff they need to cover. They're coming from a moral perspective where they say porn isn't real. Covering consent and boundaries. We know this is really important stuff. You have to do that. That's the foundation. But telling a kid that porn isn't real, or an adult that porn isn't, they know that those people are not, you know, but their brain doesn't know that. Their subconscious mind doesn't know that. And the chemicals and hormones don't know that. And so they start doing what they see. It's just human nature. And you can't, we just need to change it. We absolutely do, on all levels.
100%.
Yeah.
I guess I had so many questions, and you've covered so much of it. So, which is awesome. With the root cause of the problem, what would you put that down to specifically? I feel like you've covered a lot of it in a broad range, but to sort of bring it down to a specific space and an area to look at, and how men can start recovering. How can we do that? So
psychologists send people to me, and psychologists will try and diagnose, because that's their job. I don't believe in diagnosis. I just work with vibration and frequency and what's going on in the body, symptoms, and that are just symptoms. Okay. So we always look at the root cause in kinesiology. What is the cause? What is the why? What is the origin? And you can do all of that with trauma and things that have happened and people not coping and whatever. But when it comes to porn addiction, it's not that deep, right? It is access to porn creates porn addiction, which causes the brain to fuck up, which then causes you to want to use something to escape, right? So it's the chicken and egg situation with trauma. And people will say, oh, he had a bad childhood. Oh, he's escaping from trauma. And yes, he is. He's self-medicating, he's self-soothing, he's using porn to do that. Why? Because he's already learnt, it's already there, right? So access to porn at a young age or any age is what is the access point, right? Is the origin. All of the rest of it is just the triggers, let's say. Okay. Now, in terms of treatment, it's Kundalini activation. I've many clients, nearly all of them, that have had their Kundalini activated on first go, don't watch porn again. They don't feel like it. They don't want to masturbate. They don't want to seek it out. They feel like, woo, this is amazing. And I'm like, you've only had one session, right? You've got to do the work, because we've kind of monitored that. And at about 6 to 8 weeks, it starts to flow back in. And that's because life outside of my treatment room doesn't change. And so you've got all the triggers. And what they don't understand is when you have all those chemical cocktails going on all the time, and producing all that testosterone and the vasopressin and all the other chemicals I won't go into, you are setting yourself up for failure in terms of, it's called hypofrontality, right? Frontality. So you are super sensitive to triggers. So when you try and quit porn and you go to the supermarket and there's a chick walking around in a sexy top or whatever, or you're down the beach, you're like, oh, right? And then the shame kicks in. I'm horny. What do I do about it? Got to rub one out. What am I going to do? I'm going to go home and masturbate, right? So you become super sensitive to this. And this is why you have to do more than one session, one meditation, one, conscious self-pleasure session. You have to train your brain. You have to get out of that. And the guys that do this work, and Kundalini, I can't say it, but I'm going to. Kundalini activation is the cure to porn addiction, 100%. But it has to actually happen. You don't, it's lots of tantric practitioners are out there saying they're doing this and doing the thing that they've been taught, and there's no disrespect to that, but they're not activating the Kundalini. The body isn't moving and shaking. You're not shaking it out of the cells. Trauma, you shake. You get trauma out by shaking, right? And there's breath work, and we're doing cellular healing with the kinesiology. So my massage is called integrated massage therapy. Because I distance myself from the tantric world, because I do things differently to them. And the kinesiology, I've taken a bit of this and a bit of that, and I do chiron healing, intuitive healing, psychic surgery, all of the stuff. And it's like an exorcism. And the Kundalini's activated and all this stuff happens, and then they get homework and they have to do self-pleasure, and they have to breathe, relax, and I give them guidelines. They have to activate their limbic system, which is your arousal system. There's a 2-week challenge there that people can do. It's only $17. I may give it away for free if you want today. I'm happy to do that, because you're not going to know where you're at with this until you try and masturbate without porn. And you have to breathe. Guys will say, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get an erection. Why? I had to breathe. Just say that again to me, buddy. Right. You've got to learn to breathe. And then there's the energy work. So we layer it all in, but the 2-week challenge is a thing, and it's called a challenge for a reason, because no one has ever got this right at the start. There's a tracking sheet that comes with it. You have to monitor your erections out of 10, like walking around with a scorecard, and you have to monitor your energy levels, your sexual energy levels, your erections out of 10. So morning wood will start to return. So I've discovered that it takes about 2 weeks for things to start to shift. It's a really short period of time if you look at how long these guys have been in this, cycle of addiction. And so you'll start to see the body start to respond. You've got to activate your limbic system and do the breath work. And then after that, there's and they have to do the work behind the scenes. I can't just do my magic and then they come back 6 months later, do my magic again. It can't just be on me, So
and that's that's definitely the same with every single distractor or addiction or any kind of inner work. You cannot just go to a healer or a therapist or a psychologist and then go home and not make any changes and consistently do the work. It's for that to shift and change permanently. It's a continual, ongoing, lifelong journey.
Yeah. Because I started to see the interstate guys that I just do coaching with on Zoom, I started to see massive shifts in them compared to the guys that were coming in. And I'm thinking, what is the difference? And it's because they're doing the program and I've given them the information and I'm checking in with them. And whereas the guys that come in for the massage session, I was giving them the homework, but I wasn't following up with them because that's not part of the, the thing. But these guys interstate were like, oh my God, this is happening and this is happening. I'm thinking, right. So the accountability is huge in porn addiction. You cannot do it on your own. There are guys that have done it, but they've done it under the guidance of, they've read stuff and they've done stuff. If you do it with someone else, it's so much easier because every feedback, these guys talk to me on WhatsApp, and that's where we do voice messages back and forth. What they don't realize is happening is they're complaining at the start about things that don't work and whatever. We're discovering the resistance, we're discovering the core issues, and then they're channeling. When they talk for 10 minutes to me, to a voice message, there's no one there, they're actually channeling and they're going deep into their stuff. And so then I leave another voice message and tell them what to do. And then they come back going, what is going on? And you can do therapy on WhatsApp messages. It's really, really powerful, but you've got to get the guy to do it. He's got to do it. He's got to read the thing. He has to do the, who wants to complain about doing masturbation homework? Do you know what I mean? When I say to guys, there's homework, they're like, oh, and I'm like, you have to masturbate. Oh, but under my conditions, ooh, right? It didn't work. I couldn't get it up. I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, there you have it. You're doing it all wrong. And they're like, but you don't have a penis. You don't know. And I'm like, I do know. I've spoken to over 25,000 men, right? I've worked it out the other day because I had to. I've treated maybe 4,000 or 5,000 men one-on-one. I'm in the field. I'm at ground zero. I've done the research. It's right there, and I will be teaching practitioners. Looks like next year now, but putting together some programs for practitioners because I'm done with the one-on-one stuff. I need tribes and armies to actually come at this, because we need to do this collectively, and it's really, really important. So
100%. I could not agree more with any of what you've said, any of your perspectives and how you treat it, and the root cause, all of it in total agreement. And I'm so grateful for this conversation. Before we sort of finish up, I'd love to know what you have available for men.
Sure.
And where they can find you on social media and all of the different avenues that they can connect in.
Great. So it's Catherine Lyell. I do have a lot of people add me on Facebook, and I'm okay with that. My profile is public, so you'll find me there because people want to check me out, and I get that, right? And you can go to integratedmenshealth.com.au. So there's a website. I'm on Snapchat, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram under the same name. So just do a search on that. You'll see on my website, as you go through, there's lots of programs and ebooks that are there for erectile dysfunction. I've got an ebook for essential oils for activating that arousal system. Those are free. There's my first book, which is $5.95, I think, which I'm giving away for free a lot anyway, so they can contact me, and I'm happy to give that away again as well today. That covers more science, and it's more aimed at teens. There's a letter to parents at the start to actually explain how to go through this. So that's there. And then I've got my 30-day program, which is done on Zoom, so they can do it from anywhere in the world. It's a coaching program. And then the 90-day program is not running at the moment because I'm revamping it, and I'm bringing in some guest speakers and updating, some of the processes and tools that I do. And then the new book, which is coming out in 2 weeks, which is amazing. And it's only $34.95 for the paperback. The ebook will be on sale on launch day, which is the 22nd of September, for 99 cents. It'll be available at that price for 2 days. So people can get the ebook. But at the back of the book are all the tools. I'm giving it all away for free because it's just important. My mission on this earth is way more important than making money off this, because I'm here to assist the people that can then take what I've written and put it into practice. And if it doesn't work, I'm here to support that. And then they can do some work with me. And if they live local to Melbourne, they could come in. But the book this time is it's a doozy, and I'm a bit nervous because it tells my personal stories about my all the times that I've been sexually abused or sexually harassed. And I'm not one that's been raped or been abused by someone as a child. But when I sat down, the chapter is called Every Tom, Dick and Harry, because that's a saying. And it goes into every paragraph starts with, and the man that, and then talks about, from when I was a kid, the guy that tried to, poke me and fill me up at the park. All of the memories came back, and it was quite full on. So the initial audience for this book was men, because it is about porn addiction recovery. But I now believe that the primary audience is women, and because without the women's support around this, the men aren't going to heal. Without the understanding, the mental understanding of the science, but also the compassion and working with the men, we need to get this out in the open. All of the research from 2018 to now is in there, and you're going to see some really bad stuff. The men have been brutally honest about the way they feel about women, and it is very shocking. And you're going to see stuff about Me Too, domestic violence. There's stories in there from women and men who have been through something around porn addiction. There's one man in particular that I believe will be made into a movie after I heard his story. It's incredible. You wouldn't believe this stuff. And that's the purpose of the book, is to I wanted to release it under a different name on my deathbed. That's how full on it is for me to release this information. It's all confidential. It's all anonymous. But there are things that people need to know about this that you don't know and you won't see on my Facebook page. The stories of how destructive this has been for people in life. And it's all coming out. And it's the biggest book these publishers have ever seen. It is big, but it is structured into sections, and people can find the tools and go straight to the back of the book if they want. There's lots of information on arousal and techniques and lingam reflexology, and all of the things are in there. So that's coming out in a couple of weeks. I really want people to get on board, and I really want to give it to them for 99 cents. So, so if we can put that link somewhere eventually, that would be amazing. We have to change the world with this stuff. And if we can do it in a ripple effect, in one big like boom, I'd be really, really grateful. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The main thing that really stood out for me there on all of that is how much the women need to stop demonizing men and start to understand and have some compassion and kindness for the way that they have actually been brought up and in society, and then what's going on as to why so much of what is happening between the sexes is taking place. And that only happens through education and understanding and
communication, because the men aren't saying anything about this. They're going into dating sites and dating instances with erectile dysfunction, performance anxiety. So there's loaded communion happening, right? So this person's got all this crap and they're trying to hide all the baggage, and they're just hoping to God their penis works. And then the woman's got all their trauma and doesn't want to get naked, and she shows up naked, and all she's worried about is like, well, I really like this guy and I'm so naked right now. And the guy's like, oh my God, and he can't perform, and then straight off the woman's going to blame herself. Absolutely, hands down, guaranteed. He's not turned on. I'm not turning him on. What I'm doing isn't right. Her confidence gets affected. There's two separate things going on here, and because the men aren't communicating. So yes, women are demonizing men because they don't understand and they don't know why men are treating them the way they are. The men that are choking, slapping, all of that sexual violence that is happening without consent, without boundaries, it's a mess out there. And of course the women are triggered because we're getting this a lot from men. It's a common thing for me to receive dick pics in my business and my personal life. Hey, do you want to massage this? Sending it through. Woo! No, but the police are going to love that. So, it's we've got to fix it.
I could not agree more. And thank you so much for all your time and information and energy.
Yes,
And
passion.
yeah, the passion. I love the passion.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that that you're here and you shared all of that. So many great resources, and I'm going to make sure that they're all linked in
Great.
on the YouTube channel and on Facebook, and connect you up with as many people as possible. I will definitely be buying your book because I know how relevant it will be in the
Yeah,
work that I do, because
absolutely.
I truly see this as being such a massive part of the issues that men are having within themselves. And
Yeah.
as you said, it affects their entire life.
It's got to be our legacy. And that's the thing that's coming through. All my posts now have hashtag legacy. And I was doing this for my daughter because the dating scene is horrendous, and what am I going to be single for the rest of my life because of what's going on there? I mean, I never thought that was going to happen. And, I have a lot to offer personally and professionally. And, my daughter's coming through, she's 14, and I'm thinking, what is there for her, in terms of connected, loving, amazing relationships with respect and boundaries and consent? There isn't much there. So I was doing it for that, but now it's legacy. It's like, if I was to die tomorrow, this is why the book had to come out now, is because I could be hit by a bus, and we don't have this information out to the public yet. And we have to think of 100 years time. What are the kids going to be like then with the smartphones and the porn, So this is about legacy. So thank you so much for having me. I love you and your work. And I'm so glad we connected. I don't know, I forget where you live, but I'm coming there someday, and we're going to do some work together, and it's going to happen. So thank you for having me today, and holding this space for me, and coming from the feminine, and allowing me to, change the dialogue a little bit around what I normally talk about. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. On that note, it is goodbye from us. And please, make sure that you share this information,
Yeah.
and
Beautiful.
get involved in spreading the awareness. All right.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Bye.